Hey guys, it's Bear. It is Monday, October 7th, 2019, and I'm back from another really long delay in making another video. And there's a lot of reasons for that, one of which is just that I was really busy with my tech school training. I'm at my first base and I'm working on getting my dorm set up the way I like it. Um, Another reason is just that I didn't have like a lot of ideas for videos. People didn't ask very specific questions after the last couple. They were just like, "Well, we want to know about your trans-military experience," and the quick answer to that is that it's no different than anybody else's military experience. The difficulties that I faced in training and being in the military so far are no different than like what everybody else is going through, which I think speaks volumes about the debate and the question of whether or not trans people should be in the military. Like, I'm not having difficulties that are like hugely trans specific. There's been some, and I might talk about that at some point, but none of them have been like real problems or like I was distracted by my transness or my team was or anything like that. So that's kind of the quick answer. Um, I also just like I said, I didn't have a ton of ideas. It's kind of like having writer's block, and as per usual, when that block sort of like lifts, like the floodgates open, and I have a whole list of things that I'd like to talk about. So you probably will see a bunch of videos from me in a short span of time. I have a lot of things to say about a lot of things. Okay, so the topic I wanted to talk about today, though, is inappropriate personal questions. And this has happened to me a lot over the years since coming out. I came out in like 2014 and started T. It'll it'll be 5 years coming up since I started T, which is crazy. Um, but like when you reveal to somebody that you're trans and or gay, they just like feel like it's their place since you're opening up and talking about it in the first place. They feel like it's okay to go ahead and ask you like these really inappropriate questions. So I wanted to list them off and give my responses to a couple of them. And this is certainly not like the end all be all list. But yeah, I just kind of try to surmise them. So, what surgeries have you had, or how far along in this process are you? Do you have a penis, or do you still have that? I try to keep this channel family friendly, and so I actually started doing this video and stopped because I had used some words that I don't think are like family friendly, but they are words that people will just come right out and say to me and ask like, do I still have that? And any adults that are watching this, you can just go ahead and like fill in that blank. How do you have sex? So if you're gay and you're trans, does that make you the woman in the relationship? And then a gay specific one that I came across really recently was are you a top or a bottom? So I wanted to go ahead and address some of these, why they're inappropriate, and what some of my responses are. My responses will vary depending on a couple of different things. One is my mood. If I'm like already in a bad mood, if I'm tired, if I'm hangry, or if you've asked it in a really inappropriately just gross way, I'm gonna be a lot more aggressive with my answer. And those of you who know me, you can just imagine, right? If I've only just recently met you, or if I'm at work, or you know, other variables, I may be a little bit more gentle in my reaction. But what I almost always try to do is flip it around and ask them how it would feel if somebody asked them about that. So, for instance, the question of like, do you have a penis, or how do you have sex? Like, I'll just be like, how would you feel if I asked you about your genitals? Or what sex positions you like to do with your partner? And it makes people kind of step back and be like, oh wow, yeah, that's a really uncomfortable question. And why did I feel like it was my place to just ask you that? Like, a lot of people don't like something about their body, or specifically their genitals. Like, a lot of guys aren't happy with like the size of their penis or whatever. And it's like, if I just asked you like, so how big is that? You know, it's a really inappropriate personal question. Um, but people just feel like it's okay to go ahead and ask trans people these things, you know, or gay people these things. Let me touch on the question of what surgeries have you had slash how far along in this process are you. This just again implies that you're really uneducated about what it means to be transgender and trans like procedures. Um, what surgeries have you had? Again, you're asking me about my body, you know, and it's just like it's just what if I asked you, you know, um, which testicle hangs lower? You know, like it's a really personal question. Or just like, what have you done to modify your body? Hey, have you had any moles removed? Like, it's just like, where are you coming from asking that question? But more importantly, the other version of how far along in this process are you? Again, this just shows how ignorant of trans procedures you are and what it means to be transgender, and it kind of just goes back to the idea that there is a full transition and a partial transition. And I even see trans people that are confused about this. People that are like really early in their transitions that think that they have to have like this whole list of things done to be like complete. And I think there's a huge problem with that. It, not just step back, breathe. There is no right or wrong way to be trans, okay? And there's no right or wrong way to transition. And some people don't have any medical intervention, and some people can't. You know, not everybody's system is in a place that will allow medical transition, you know, like whether that's hormones or surgeries. Some people just can't do that. You know, that does not make them any less trans. And then, furthermore, one of the big things that stands in front of people is finances, you know, and I think that that's something nobody really looks at. And I'm not going to really derail right now from like all the costs that go into this, but it's huge. And so some people can't afford to go and get like their name and gender marker changed, and it's horrible. It's horrible to go around with that legal name on your ID, or every time you go to the doctor, or every time you go to Walgreens, they're going to call out that name that you don't identify with, and you're going to have dysphoria and anxiety around that. And it's just a matter of like finances. So asking somebody how far in this process they are implies that there's like a way to, you know, do this fully or partially or whatever, and it's just like none of that matters. Like none of that matters, and none of it's your business, you know. So I had a guy at the DMV when I went in with my letter from a doctor saying this person is trans, and in my state all I needed was a letter from a doctor saying go ahead and change his name, gender marker, whatever, and like a thing signed by a judge, you know, saying change his name and whatever. And like the guy at the counter read it and was like, he just like looked at me and was like, "Oh, so how far in this process are you?" And I was just like, "Far enough for you to process the application. That's all you need to know. You don't need to know anything about like what I've done to my body or where I am. I'm far enough for a doctor to say like change this guy's information legally. That's all you need to know." So yeah, hugely personal question. Like please don't ask people that. Please, if you're curious about any of the trans procedures and interventions and stuff that can be done medically, Google is free. And that's another one that a lot of people will just say to people. Like, Google's free. You don't need to ask me really personal questions. You can do some research. You know, the only time that you should be asking somebody something so personal is if you're really good friends. And you should always ask permission to ask personal questions. I'll even ask permission, like, to ask somebody's pronouns. You know, if I feel like there's some ambiguity, or whatever. Like, hey, may I ask you about like your pronouns? Yes. Okay. What pronouns do you prefer? You know, I'm not going to get derailed on that either because, like, of course, the video is 10 minutes long already, and I just cannot make short videos. Sorry. Okay, so if you are gay, does that make you the woman in the relationship? This is something that gay people have dealt with for a long, 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 long time, and it's just like so incredibly heteronormative. And that means that the only way a relationship can be normal to you is if there's a man and there's a woman. And there's all sorts of issues with like gender roles and expectations that are going on there that I'm not even going to get around to. But that's not how it works. There is, in gay relationships, there's not a man and a woman. There's a man and a man, there's a woman and a woman, and they may play different parts in the relationship. Somebody may be the more butch manly one. They might both be manly. They might both be like really effeminate. And there's no rules that say that masculine acting and presenting people need to be attracted to feminine presenting and acting people. Like, I'm a fairly masculine trans guy. I identify very strongly to the masculine point of like binary or however that's referred to. I don't even know. I'm really tired. And I'm attracted to really manly men. I don't like more flamboyant, effeminate gay men. I don't. I like masculine men. So you just please get past the idea that there has to be a man and a woman in every relationship. It's not a thing. So, and again, it just shows that you're not very educated, and it's a fairly personal question, and it can really rub people the wrong way. Getting into one that's more gay specific that I came across really, really recently was that people feel that they have the right to ask you if you're a top or a bottom. And it's like, again, this goes back to me asking, how do you like to have sex with your partner? That's a really personal question. What positions do you like? You know, that's not something that anybody would really ask somebody that's not a really good friend of theirs. You know? And yeah, that leads me to my next point, which is when people get defensive about this stuff, which people, it's human nature to do, like it's human nature to be curious, they'll defend themselves by being like, oh, but you're openly gay or you're openly trans, so of course it's okay for me to ask you these personal things. No? What? How does that make any sense? You know, that's, it's just like again, this comes back to like, okay, so you're openly straight. You know, how do you like to do it with your, you know, wife or your husband? Like, that's not something that anybody would really be asking you. So just because I'm openly gay doesn't mean that I want to talk about how I have sex. What? Or because I do kind of like this public platform, and I am quite open with talking about my transition and stuff. I almost always preface these conversations by saying I have two rules. One, don't ask me about my birth name, and two, don't ask me about my genitals. I guess I should add a third one, which is don't ask me about my sexual preferences. You know, but these seem like they should be inherently like common sense, and yet people defend themselves and they're like, yeah, but you just told me that you're trans, so why don't you want to talk about your body? Okay, anyway, so I'm gonna stop the video because I'm aggravated and I'm tired. I have a headache, and it's like almost 15 minutes long. But those are my feelings on some of these personal questions, and those are some of my reactions, and how I handle it. Again, I like to just flip things around and turn it back on the other person, you know, and it makes them think about how it feels to be asked those things. And, you know, when you are dealing with, holy hell, when you're dealing with anybody and you make a mistake or they tell you that they're uncomfortable in some way, like, don't get defensive. This is not a trans thing. This is not a gay thing. This is a human being thing. When somebody tells you that they don't like something about the way that you're behaving or treating them or whatever, have some human decency, listen to them, and like back off. And if you do have questions, Google is free. And if you do have questions that you think might be a little abrasive, or if you are working on a research paper and you want to ask questions or whatever, ask permission. I've talked about this in other videos. Like, I will ask somebody their permission to ask them a question. And that goes past transness, gayness, whatever. I asked somebody of Chinese heritage once, is it okay if I ask you about your heritage? And ask you a race-specific question. Because it can rub people the wrong way. And people have been treated certain ways around their race, gender, orientation, presentation. People have been treated in possibly harmful ways. So have some sensitivity to that. Ask them permission. And then if you do mess up or you do step on their toes, like, don't get defensive. Be like, I'm really sorry that I crossed that line or I hurt your feelings or whatever. When you're ready, can we please talk about how I can better approach it? Or, whatever. Just try to be sensitive. Good God. Like, have some sensitivity for other people's, like, space and emotions and experiences. Anyway, I'm going to stop. Or I'm just going to keep rambling. So thanks for listening. If you've actually listened for the last, 17 minutes, thank you very much. And hopefully I'll see you again soon with some other videos. Have a good one.